So here we are again, another discussion with my great friend Paul Regan. Today we're talking about what is spiritual and what's more rational, or let's say, where do spiritual tool sets come in, where we're misapplying sort of business tool sets, which seems to be a bit of a common theme in relation to some of the challenges we're facing, which frankly appear to be a bit demonic. So yeah, this is the next in our series of our humanities series, which much enjoyed with Paul. So over to you, Paul. So what's your thoughts in terms of what should we deal with spiritually where we're trying to apply the wrong technique, let's say? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm actually sort of like, I remember someone saying something at a NA convention once, and it was one of those things that I didn't really understand, but I thought, oh, that sounds good. I can hear myself saying that. Yeah. And it was one of those things that I kind of wished that was true. And it was this speaker, a guy called Barley Jim. He's a friend. I've known him for a long time. And he said, problems are psychological and all my solutions are spiritual.
Yeah.
And then he went on to just elaborate in the parlance of 12-step recovery. He said, every problem is a step 2 problem. And step 2 came to believe that a power greater than myself could help cure my alcoholism.
Yeah.
Okay. So the spiritual principle of step 2 is hope and faith, right? Hope that you'll have connection with God, and faith that he'll sort you out and remove you from your insane thinking, which is your perspective of what's going on.
Yeah.
So I've now come to believe, because I've been completely brainwashed by 12-step recovery, and increasingly brainwashed by Christian doctrine, that the most practical way to live is through applying spiritual principles.
Yeah.
And I think that I was very, very fortunate, because I know without any shadow of a doubt that it's living by spiritual principles that's kept me clean. 12 years, no relapses.
Yeah.
And anyone who struggled with any kind of addiction knows that it's very, very difficult to stop doing something that you really, really want to do, particularly if you've been doing that thing for decades. And, credit to 12-step recovery. They come in, they have something called a program, which is showing you how to use a spiritual way of life. It's exemplified in the 12 steps, and the 12 steps are really nothing more than a series of actions that allow you to facilitate a number of principles in your life.
Yeah.
And those principles are really honesty, acceptance, and surrender, faith, hope, courage, willingness, humility, forgiveness, sincerity, persistence, love, service, and awareness. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And if you could, if you could use those, you'll live a good life. Now, that's easier said than done, but the steps help us do that. The steps help us put those principles in action. So I was kind of fortunate. I was kind of fortunate in my ability to pick up recovery quite quickly. Number one was because for some reason I started in Bali, and then when I was in Hong Kong, I like doing stuff early in the morning. So I'd often go to morning meetings, and in morning meetings you had people who had jobs, and were expats, right? In Hong Kong, like people had big jobs.
Yeah.
And so early on, I got a lot of exposure from people who were talking about how using spiritual principles helped them tremendously in business. Okay. Yeah. And me being the sort of like little grifter that I was like, wow, that sounds like a real edge. And it is. In actual fact, it really, the Jews have known this for years, right? It really is a huge edge, right? It's almost like playing in another dimension. So I realized that, you know, if you take a spiritual, you know, you can take a spiritual approach to all of life, right? Recovery isn't just necessary for, you know, dealing with your addiction. Just as church and God isn't just for Sundays. It should be for everything. You know, all of Christ for all of life. And actually, the more places you apply Christ, the happier He is, the happier you are.
Yeah.
And the other thing I discovered was, and I've spoken about this before, is that in recovery, they say you will not pick up, God will remove the urge to drink and use as long as you stay in fit spiritual condition. And
Yeah.
fit spiritual condition in recovery parlance means prayer, meditation, going to meetings, doing step work, being a sponsor, having sponsees, helping people in their recovery, and generally trying not to be a dick. And I found that the more I did that, the higher my spiritual condition, the better I was creatively. Okay. Yeah. The easier it was, not only the easier, but the easier and more enjoyable it was for me to solve my clients' problems.
Yeah.
So right early on, I got two massive advantages. It was like, number one, I had this creative energy store that I'd never had before as a creative. So I felt better and I could write better. But also I had this framework for looking at business and for looking at people, which was completely different to the one I had in the past, which was manipulative and Machiavellian and coercive and sneaky and, you know, just what you'd expect from, you know, someone in the advertising industry.
Yeah.
So I found, you know, I feel like I've been going on for a minute. I mean, I can go on further, but I think that, you know, one of the reasons I try and sort of like get people to read the Bible is I say, if you want to know how to think about something, think the way God thinks, because the way humans, you know, it's Easter, right? And I think, like, I don't know, 2,000 years ago, whatever it is, maybe not today, but to sort of last Friday, I think Jesus was clumping into Jerusalem on his donkey. And just before that, he told like his crew, the apostles, he goes, listen, I'm going here. It's going to be a big party, but it's not going to go well. I'm going to be put to death and I'm going to rise again on the third day. And Peter goes, nope, absolutely not. We won't stand for that. And Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. And I think it's Matthew. I don't know. I'll have to check it. But the thing is, he said, you're not thinking in the way of man. You're not thinking in the way of God. You're thinking in the way of the devil. The way man thinks is the way the devil thinks. And I didn't actually realize that. I thought sort of like, you know, man wasn't particularly good and the devil was definitely bad. But he said, the ways of man are the ways of the devil. And it's like that conversation that we had last week about this other book that I've been reading, which is based on C.S. Lewis, where one of the characters says, he said, if you say the devil made you do it, you're wrong. The reality is the devil helped you do it. You wanted to do it in the first place. Yeah. The devil just provided the thing. And so I really believe, I mean, certainly in my experience, it's like my motivations and what I want has always been pretty warped and perverse. And I've got like 12 years experience of showing that sort of like when I take another perspective and when I take another framework, one that's built on spiritual principles, my life is a lot better. I'm a lot happier and everything just goes a lot better.
Yeah.
And I'm not sticking 400 quid up a day up my nose and chasing women with horrible diseases.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So you found something better than that, Paul. Wow, that's amazing.
I think it should all be spiritual, and I think that and really it's not actually as difficult as it sounds.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. That's really generous mind share. I think for me, it comes down to something really straightforward, that what's our purpose? Our purpose is to love God and love other people.
Amen.
Number one, top of the list. And I think if you ever ask anybody who's maybe a non-Christian if there's something missing in their lives, there certainly is. And the challenge is, what do we fill that with? And I think both you and I, being sort of alpha males who have always had a large itch to scratch, have filled that with all kinds of colourful things, which really haven't been very good for us. And you then realise actually maybe you run out of road, or maybe you reach a point whereby you think, hold on a minute, I'm going to have a serious rethink in my life. I think what I've realised is that I do a lot of work with psychologists, their thinking is almost like godlike, actually, in terms of a sort of an unholy sort of narcissistic look into someone's head, which is verging on being unhealthy and almost godlike, actually, in terms of its arrogance. And I think what I've realised, actually, that most of the psychological issues that arise are actually spiritual issues. So things like depression.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
You and I could list 1,000 different sort of examples of where, I mean, maybe our personal testimonies in terms of where I brought people to someone to the church who was depressed, and never since.
Well, look, I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I mean, the problems in most people's lives is not caused. It's caused by sin. It's caused by people doing things they're just not supposed to do.
Yeah.
And a psychologist can't offer any advice.
No. Yeah, and in fact, it's quite disturbing to think that they can, actually. So I think that's a classic example of where the wrong thing is being applied to the wrong problem. That said, I think
it's doubled down on wrongness.
I mean, what I've realised is that dialogue and what we say very much dictates what we do and what we think. And without faith, actually, people pretty much believe anything, which is very, very dangerous.
Yeah, well, that's not on. Hallelujah, you're not wrong there, brother.
Yeah, and so I think that really puts people in a dangerous situation. But again, practically, I noticed a long time ago that actually 75%, again, going back to psychology, 75% of people in organizations will go along and do anything really to follow the boss and please the boss. So I think the challenge is sort of, if you've got faith, what's your faith actually in? And where do you turn to? What's your route when you get shaken? And or do you just sort of get blown around in the wind? And I think, which does this sort of full circle to this identity politics stuff, which is just an extreme form of narcissism, which is fundamentally evil. So the only way to make sense of the wokeness, I mean, I've written five books in total now related to wokeness, in terms of what I've described as being the evil in silence. And the reason why, and the antithesis of what Jesus said, bring things into the light, and actually what that does is it negates that issue. It actually brings things and the worst thing you can do to drive things underground. So there's a real issue with silence and lack of free speech. It's very much a spiritual issue. The other trigger as well, I think, is anger. Anger is where people are challenged and they can't justify it in their own mind what their belief actually is, and they may well realize it's a lie, and the only response is actually to get angry, or it's another.
Because they know they're wrong and they don't know how to remedy it. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think Christians, actually, oddly enough, have always been up for challenging their own faith. So if you go to an alpha group, it's all about challenging your own faith and actually your own faith. And and that wouldn't suit a lot of Islamic teaching, because a lot of that would be quite uncomfortable for almost blasphemous in certain situations. So I think and as you said, I mean, one thing I've learned recently is sin is what separates us from God, and actually Jesus dying on the cross at Easter is what provides us the opportunity. But the thing I've learned, as you've just articulated earlier, is that you have to stay on that straight and narrow path. So you have to actually, having made a step in the right direction, actually avoid doing stupid things in the future to avoid
Yeah, how about that?
avoid opening the door to the devil.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly, I just want to say this because I want to remind myself. It's like, we've been going through God's blessings and God's curses in Deuteronomy. And, my pastor made it really clear. He said, there's really only one thing you're supposed to do in this life. It's just obey God.
Yeah.
If you obey God, your life will go pretty well.
Yes.
Now, there'll still be problems, but at least they won't be problems that you've created. You disobey God, you're going to get right. Then you get the curses, and there are way more curses than there are blessings.
Yeah.
And you're going to get a whole heap of new sort of like metamorphose problems that are entirely of your own making. And I sat there and I thought, I've spent thousands of hours sitting in AA meetings, cocaine anonymous meetings, narcotics anonymous meetings, listening to people talking about problems completely of their own making.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
right?
the thing
I was like, right, obey God.
Yeah, totally. I think that what I've learned on that point as well is there are quite a number of people who have quite comfortable lives who don't obey God, and I think they're probably in the worst possible position because
yeah.
They're in a really weird twilight zone, and I think there's a lot of people that search out that comfort. So this whole notion of wokeness is about searching out safety, and Thessalonians, I think 9 talks about do not search out safety, because it's the same thing. It's only by addressing issues rather than burying your head in the sand, and actually you actually root out the truth and move forwards. And I think as well, it's within that there's also joy. You discover it's through difficulty you discover Jesus. It's not through comfort.
That's true.
Jesus wants dependence and devotion, and I think it's having got to that place. There's quite a few people that Jesus healed, and he said, by the way, do not do that again, otherwise you could be in far worse trouble than you were in the first place. So I think that's there's a real responsibility, and that's one of my most recent learnings on this fantastic journey. But it is absolutely right. I mean, Jesus doesn't do sin whatsoever. It doesn't even differentiate between dropping your fag packet or chopping someone's head off. It just doesn't compute in Jesus's mind whatsoever. So, we are all sinners, and unless we deal with that, then we're in a really difficult situation. We just create this sort of self-fueling mess, and I think the most unhealthy thing, which is definitely spiritual, is this obsession with self and narcissism and this self-identification, and the very very definite spirits which are making men effeminate when men raise their game, and also the spirit that corrupts women as well, that
Ahab, Jezebel.
Ahab and Jezebel, which are very specific traits. And as you rightly said, that again, spiritually, the devil is actually transsexual. And I think you and I should certainly if we don't learn to love everybody, including our enemies or different varieties, we certainly should do. And I don't think we would suggest that we're any much better than anybody else, but at the same time, there are things that we shouldn't tolerate.
Well, a thought occurred to me today because I was winding up for a fight with an ex-girlfriend who I've since blocked on Facebook because of her, unqualified support of this whole tranny nonsense. And you have a conversation. They say, "Why do you? Oh, what you think?" I go, "What's your moral authority?" They've got none, but they think they have some because they're a good person.
Yeah.
And that's the terrifying thing. It's like, well, what's yours? I go, I know I'm a wretched person, but I'm going by what the Bible says.
Yeah, exactly.
That's God, the living triune God. That's my moral authority.
Yeah.
Okay, a culture that has provided the foundation for the most successful civilizations over the last 2,000 years.
Yeah,
that's my moral authority.
Yeah,
but it's like, and again, it's to self.
Yeah.
Once you think you know you can be the judge of these things, it's like, are you nuts?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely mad. Yeah, I mean, it's utterly absurd. And I think the ideology is really dangerous because it's imperfect, even at its simplest level, even in a fairly logical level, ideology is always imperfect. If you genuinely believe what you've just described, Paul, that somehow you can set out your own rules and you can set out your own framework and the rest of it, then there's no way of justifying that. So the only option is to avoid challenge, and sit in a glass house and hope people don't throw stones, and hence this cancel culture, and and also the trashing of the family and the fabric of society, which is just evil, and the role of men and women. I mean, the role of men is totally counter to the dialogue. I mean, I talked a bit about dialogue. This notion that men are what is the word, toxic masculinity and all that sort of stuff. It's just a lie. It's men that keep women safe, full stop.
Yeah.
But
also, one of the hallmarks of a society that was suffering from toxic femininity is surely that they'd be constantly complaining about toxic masculinity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and when push comes to shove, you look at the facts. Who's actually built the infrastructure? Who's actually down holes picking up rats? It's us idiot males, doing our absolute utmost to hold this whole thing together. So I think there's a lot of things, and I think as well, we should trust what we feel, because I think if you really make an attempt to try and get strategy right, Paul, a lot of it actually is intuitive, and intuitive is not just intuitive, it's based on your spiritual state and sense of right and wrong. So if you're rooted and you're worshiping God, then you've got a pretty good chance actually of having that discernment between what's right or wrong, and developing wisdom to, and the antithesis to that is all this sort of artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, this utopia.
Oh yeah, well, sorry, but this is a huge other thing. We talked about it. The thing is, if you don't have a spiritual foundation for what you do in business, then you have no access to wisdom. None.
Yeah.
And I think you may have great strategy, you may have great tactics, you may have an amazing tech stack, but you just won't know how to use it.
Yeah.
You'd be like a 3-year-old with an iPhone.
Yeah. And I think the reality of that is that those businesses will drive themselves into the ground, Paul.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the trajectory of those businesses, they without firm roots, they will drive themselves into the ground. So I think from a very practical perspective, it's absolutely vital that people just develop that discernment and wisdom. And without God, I mean, God is the source of both of those two things. Without that, you've just in this awful sort of destructive hamster wheel, which I think I feel increasingly, there are more things that I find repulsive than I do otherwise. And again, the Bible says, do not conform to the ways of the world.
Amen.
So we are the rebels.
Yeah, no, we are. We're the Rebel Alliance. It's WF, UN, Labour Party. They, without a doubt, are the empire.
Yeah, exactly. So so I think if I look at most of what I've got going on, I think without my spiritual discernment, I don't think I can make any sense of it. In fact, I'd probably be the next idiot just jumping on the next bandwagon.
I look back and it was just, again, everything. It just becomes so small. Every decision has to be made on how well it's going to impact me, how it will benefit me.
Yeah.
Some industries work on that kind of energy. The advertising industry does, because I strive to do great creative work, because I wanted people to tell me how clever I was. I wanted to get the ego hit of having people turn my ideas into TV commercials. I mean, it works to a point. I mean, it's, you know, I think fashion as an industry is one that's completely fueled by ego.
Yeah.
I think the fashion industry is in a terrible state at the moment, but you know, it wasn't in the 1980s. I think they did, and I think it was ego. So, but it's just it's not a sustainable long-term thing.
No.
You know, and it won't bring, ultimately it won't bring you peace.
Yeah, totally. I think as well, you made the point, which we haven't talked about a while ago. It's funny how these things sort of ebb and flow in our minds, but you made the point that the roots of mental health is spiritual first, then
Amen.
emotional, and then mental health. And so if you have any chance of being able to survive the situation without some sort of mental health issue, you've got to look after your spiritual health.
Yeah. I'm always teasing mental health coaches on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That one.
Absolutely.
It's like, you know, I generally just start with emotional health and ask them how they cover that.
Yeah, it's a farce. I mean, it really is a farce. And actually, it all circles.
Well, again, because they're like junior psychologists, so it's even worse, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, but
it sort of it rapidly, if you speak to a psychologist, it rapidly circles back to, you know, this sense of complete confidence in what they've been taught and sort of self-reliance, and it just.
Well, the other thing about psychologists is a psychologist. You don't see a psychologist, right? The best they can offer you is baseline.
Yeah.
You never go to a psychologist and they say, "Oh, you know, I listen. You do what I tell you. I will have you pumping. I will have you thriving. I will have you singing in the street. I will have you so fully alive. I've got this medical grade cocaine. Do you know what I mean? They can't do that.
Yeah.
They can't get you. They can't. It's like you'll be normal. You'll be normal. that's
I know.
It's like, hello?
Really? I know. I mean, I think the real tragedy, though, as well, in this mess, I mean, because I think the wokeness has created a, well, as per that thing we were discussing earlier, we shared earlier, the wokeness is become so ideological, it's become religious. And so actually speaking up about Christianity is almost blasphemous against the woke ideology, and that seems to permeate. And so I think the great tragedy is that Christianity.
I think you and I might have watched the same video today.
Yeah, well, Christianity is actually almost being labelled as being
blasphemy,
mental illness, because it's so wacky, and because it's so countercultural, and because you know, it's the truth, frankly, and it's become increasingly objectionable and potentially offensive, because it flies in the face of what these fragile narcissists believe in their own minds. Well, actually,
yeah, I mean, they're the enemy. We are bipolar apart. You know, we submit before the triune God, and they think they're their own gods.
Yeah, it's war.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's not only war. The shooting has started.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why it's become without a spiritual foundation, it's almost impossible, like you were saying just now, to rationalize that conversation with that person on Facebook. You can't square that circle.
Yeah,
it's just, and not
well, no, it's because it's demonic and they're possessed.
Yeah, and it gets worse, I think.
What's even worse is this person who's in the medical profession. So I know that they're going, oh, you know, this will be an easy grift. And that's just unconscionable.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think actually you're absolutely right. It is diabolical, and therefore it's almost like it's living, and it gets worse. It gets more sophisticated at deceiving as well, and the dialogue gets more deceptive, and it gets more rooted, and the ideology just reinforces itself, and it's like, I mean, a very good friend of mine who's a very successful chief exec, who I'm doing some work with at the moment, he used the word infection. It absolutely is an infection, and it's destroying. I think, to be honest, it's far worse than COVID, Paul. I think the damage being done through this diabolic infection is far worse than COVID, far more damaging, and leaving us far more open to nefarious inputs like China and Russia. And in fact, you can see that Putin is actually outgunning us on the ethical front now because of his analysis of the neo-Marxism that the West is,
Yeah,
and he knows.
yeah. No, he called it brilliantly.
Yeah. So
I mean, the Church of England is just it's dissolving.
Yeah.
Before our eyes.
Yeah, really disastrous, and it's actually that's an internal problem as well. They are totally infected.
Yeah, it's the bishops. They just wait. It's institutionally woke.
Yeah.
Again,
Disastrous.
Ahab's.
Yeah. And so that just shows, doesn't it? It's that it can take root anywhere. So, you know, I just pray, Paul, that you and I stay strong and others may take some encouragement from what we're talking about. You know, happy to have a discussion if people are struggling with these sorts of things, because it really is this problem will accelerate. I've never known a situation in my life where things have become so uprooted and so wrong and diabolical.
Yeah, no, I agree. I 100%.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I've never been in. I mean, we had a conversation about this about 3 months ago. I said I feel saner than most people I meet in business context.
Yeah.
I mean, funnily enough, I had a strange thing happen to me for the second time. I was on a sales call with this guy today, and he had very curly hair, and he had a background on. And I was looking at the back. I go, "Is that a young Walter you're wearing?" And he goes, "Yes, it is." And he just sort of like his attitude changed. I go, "Fantastic." I go, "I don't know what it is." I go, "Whenever someone comes on one of these things," I said, "I don't feel anxious, but I'm really happy. I don't know what it is. It just changes the tempo of the conversation because, you know, I like Jews and I know that we're going to have a broader, more expansive and just more authentically engaging conversation.
Yeah.
We're not even the same religion, but I don't know. I just feel that. I suppose that actually ties into what we've been talking about today. Because I suppose what I'm saying is, look, here's someone who speaks my language.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
here's someone who takes God seriously, and wants to live by what God says. And you know, we're pretty close, right? There's a couple of fundamental issues, but you know, we're pretty much on the same team.
Yeah.
For most intents and purposes, it's we can get on.
Yeah.
It's part of the same tribe, literally.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, I think both the same with the Islamic faith. They believe in the Bible. They believe it. They
yeah, no, I agree with you. I'd much rather deal with an Orthodox lesbian than some green-haired tranny. Trust me, any day.
Yeah. So I think we ought to. I mean, that's another thing to build on common ground and not be divided. Because the other thing is that all of this stuff divides us, and that's wrong as well. So the more stuff that we can build on and that's right, the better. And there's a lot of, I think, the Jews are just wonderful people, and the Islamic faith is rooted in similar sorts of things as the Old Testament. So let's build on those common themes and let's address this. Try and look for more reasons to divide us. Yeah, brilliant. Well, that's been quite a expensive conversation, Paul. So, yeah, nice one. Any final thoughts?
No, if anyone's watching it, it's Easter. You know, this is go to church. Go to church on Easter Friday. Go to church on Easter Sunday. You know, that's the message of how to do life.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean,
basically, yeah. It's the power of sacrifice. It's going to be a powerful time. I really love Easter. In some ways, I prefer it to Christmas.
Yeah,
I'm going to be going to church every day this week, which is great. I'm lucky. I don't live too far from my church, so I can just saunter down. And I know that's going to give me a huge spiritual uplift.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so true. I think just in its simplicity, I mean, Easter, I think, is more important than Christmas, really, because
Yeah,
Easter was the purpose of God coming to earth to reduce the separation and provide the opportunity for direct connection and direct relationship with him, without which, by forgiving our sins, because as we've just said, sin creates separation, which in fact actually is the whole ethos of woke, isn't it? Sinful separation in their own minds. Yeah, it's a very important time, and it's, if anybody does go to church, that would be fantastic. Good on you. And yeah, brilliant. All right. Well,
yeah, it's the most countercultural thing you can do.
Exactly, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's not boring.
No. Oh no. Oh no.
That's another great lie, isn't it? Anyway.
All right.
Great
Take
to
care,
speak to you, my
brother.
friend. Cheers. So bye.